"Look at the necklace," the little girl whispered, her voice barely rising above the soft clink of silverware in the hotel ballroom. At the far end of the room, under a chandelier bright as daylight, billionaire Adrian Vale paused with a crystal glass halfway to his lips. The music had just faded into a smooth piano melody, and around him, guests in dark suits and satin gowns kept smiling as if nothing unusual had happened. But 10-year-old Maya stood very still near the entrance, her small hand wrapped around the strap of a faded backpack, eyes fixed on the woman beside Adrian. The woman was smiling too, polished and graceful, but Maya's face had gone pale in a way that made the nearest valet glance over. "Sir," Maya said, louder this time, and several heads turned. "That necklace doesn't belong to her. It belongs to my mother." A soft hush moved through the room like a passing breeze. Adrian lowered his glass slowly. His expression did not change right away, but something in his eyes sharpened. "What did you say?" he asked, careful and quiet. Maya took one small step forward. She was not trembling, not backing away, only looking from the necklace to the woman's face with a kind of brave certainty that felt too large for someone her age. The pendant at the end of the chain caught the light, a tiny crescent wrapped around a blue stone, elegant and simple at the same time. Adrian had seen it before. He knew he had. The woman beside him reached up with 2 fingers, almost as if she wanted to cover it, but then she stopped herself and gave a short, polished laugh. "Honey, you must be confused," she said. Yet Maya only shook her head once. "No, I'm not," she replied. "My mom used to say it was the last thing she had from your house." That sentence landed harder than any shout could have. Adrian's gaze moved to the child's face, then back to the pendant, and the room seemed to tighten around them. In the far corner, a server slowed his steps. Near the windows, a few guests stopped pretending to check their phones. Maya reached into her backpack with deliberate care, as if she had prepared for this moment long before tonight. She pulled out a folded photograph, the edges worn soft from being handled too many times, and held it up with both hands. "She left this for me," Maya said, "and she told me one day I'd know where to find the truth." Adrian stared at the photo without moving. The air felt thinner now, the music almost too quiet to hear. Then his face changed, just slightly, the way a locked door changes when the right key finally turns. He looked at the necklace again, and then at Maya, and something old and buried began to rise in his eyes. For the first time that night, he looked unsettled. For the first time, the woman beside him had no polished answer ready. And for the first time, Maya knew she had said the right thing. Adrian did not speak right away. He looked at the photograph in Maya's hands, then at the necklace resting against the woman beside him, and the room seemed to hold its breath with him. The guests near the front tables had gone quiet now, their silverware untouched, their attention fixed on the strange stillness spreading across the ballroom. Maya stayed where she was, small and steady, her shoulders squared under the soft glow of the chandeliers. She did not look away. She had learned long ago that truth often came softly, but it always came with weight. Adrian finally took one slow step forward. The movement was careful, almost uncertain, as if he was afraid the moment might vanish if he moved too quickly. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice low enough that it carried only a few feet before fading into the silence. Maya lifted the photo a little higher. "My mother kept it in a box with my birth certificate," she said. "She told me to bring it with me if I ever met the man wearing the necklace." A murmur moved through the room. The woman beside Adrian gave a faint smile that did not reach her eyes, but her hand slid over the necklace as if to hide it. Maya noticed. She had noticed everything from the start. Adrian's gaze shifted again, this time more sharply. "Your mother told you that?" he asked. Maya nodded once. "She said you would know what it means." The air in the ballroom felt colder now. Behind the rows of guests, a waiter paused with a tray of untouched glasses, and the string quartet had fallen into such a soft hush that even the turning of a page at the back of the hall sounded too loud. Adrian reached slowly toward his own jacket pocket, then stopped, as if thinking better of it. His eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with the shock of someone trying to place a memory that had been buried for years. "What is your mother's name?" he asked. Maya held his stare. Elaine Hart. The name landed like a dropped glass. Several people in the room exchanged quick glances, and the woman beside Adrian went still. Adrian's face lost all color. He repeated the name under his breath, almost like a prayer he had not expected to remember. Maya's fingers tightened around the edges of the photograph, but her voice remained calm. She said, "If I found you, I should ask about the garden behind the old house on Maple Street." For one long second, Adrian said nothing at all. Then he looked away, toward the wide windows at the far end of the ballroom, where the city lights shimmered in the dark like distant stars. When he looked back at Maya, his expression had changed completely. The polished confidence was gone. In its place was something raw, something deeply human. "There was a swing there," he said quietly. Maya blinked. "And a tree that never bloomed right in spring," he added. The room seemed to tilt around them. Maya's chin lifted a little, as if she had just seen the last piece of a puzzle fall into place. The woman beside Adrian took a small step back, her smile now gone. No one in the ballroom moved. No one even breathed too loudly. Adrian stared at Maya as though the years between them had suddenly become visible, and whatever he had believed about his life before that night was beginning to break apart. Then, very slowly, he lowered his hand and said, "I think we need to talk." Adrian held the silence for one long second, as if he were trying to hear the shape of the truth before speaking it aloud. Maya stood very still beneath the ballroom lights, her small hands folded in front of her dress, her eyes fixed on his face. Around them, the guests remained frozen in place, their champagne glasses untouched, their whispers caught somewhere between surprise and disbelief. Adrian took a slow breath and stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, only enough to let her know he was listening. "Tell me everything," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a strain in it now, like a thread pulled too tight. Maya glanced toward the windows, where the city lights flickered beyond the glass, then back at him. "I did not come here to make trouble," she said softly. "I came because I heard something." Adrian's jaw tightened. "What did you hear?" She looked past him, toward the woman who had stood beside him a moment ago. "I heard her on the phone," Maya said. "She was talking about that day, the day the swing broke." A few guests exchanged uneasy looks. The woman's face went pale, but she lifted her chin and forced a small laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said. "This child is confused." Maya did not flinch. She reached into the tiny satchel hanging at her side and drew out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the edges. "My mama kept this," she said. "She told me to bring it if I ever found you." Adrian stared at the paper as though he already knew what was inside. When Maya opened it, the ballroom seemed to grow even quieter. It was a photograph, faded with time, showing a younger Adrian standing beside a little girl on a wooden swing under a leafless tree. The little girl was missing the ribbon that now rested in Maya's hair. Adrian's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came out. Maya looked up at him, her voice gentle but certain. "My mama said you gave me this ribbon the day you promised to come back." The woman beside him let out a sharp, uncertain breath. One of the guests slowly lowered his phone. Another turned away, as if suddenly ashamed to be watching. Adrian took the photograph with careful fingers, his hand trembling just enough for Maya to notice. He looked from the picture to her face, and something in him cracked open. "Who is your mother?" he asked. Maya answered without hesitation. "Elena Brooks." The name landed in the room like a dropped glass. Adrian closed his eyes for a brief moment, and when he opened them again, they were shining. "Elena," he whispered. The woman beside him stepped forward at once. "Adrian, do not listen to this," she said quickly. "You are upset. You cannot trust a story like this." But Adrian did not look at her. He kept staring at Maya, at the ribbon, at the photograph, as if the past had walked back into his life wearing a child's shoes and a steady gaze. "Where is she now?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Maya's shoulders lowered, just a little. "She is gone," she said, and the words were simple, not dramatic, only true. "But before she left, she told me one thing. She said if I ever found the man from the swing, I should tell him I came anyway." Adrian swallowed hard, and for the first time that evening, the room saw him not as a billionaire, not as a host, not as a man in control, but as someone standing on the edge of a life he had lost and was only now beginning to see again. Adrian did not move for a long moment. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath with him, the music fading somewhere beyond the crystal chandeliers, as if the entire house had turned to listen. He looked at Maya again, then at the faded photograph in her hand, then at the small ribbon tied around her wrist. It was not a grand symbol. It was not polished or expensive, but in that quiet room, it felt louder than everything money had ever bought. Elena stepped in closer, her voice softer now, but still careful. Adrian, this is not the place for this, she said. There are guests waiting. We should speak privately. Maya lifted her chin. No, she said, not loud, just steady. If he wants the truth, he should hear it now. That simple sentence landed in the room like a bell. Adrian's expression changed at once. He nodded once, slowly, and turned to the people around him. Everyone, please step back, he said. This conversation is not over. The guests shifted in uneasy silence, and then, one by one, they gave him space. Adrian looked down at Maya and crouched so they were closer to the same height. His face had lost its sharp edge. What remained was a man trying to understand a wound he had never known was still open. Tell me everything, he said. Maya took a careful breath. My mother did not want anything from you, she said. She never came for money. She came because she said you deserved to know. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he stayed still. She said you waited by the old park swing every Tuesday after school, Maya continued. She said you kept your promise for 3 weeks, even when nobody else did. Then one day, you were gone. A hush moved through the room. The old park, the swing, the promise. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, they were shining. I was told she moved away, he said quietly. I was told I should stop asking questions. Maya did not flinch. That is what they wanted, she said. But not what she wanted. Elena's face went pale. She turned slightly, as if the walls themselves had become too close. Adrian stood again, slowly, and the change in him was visible to everyone. He was no longer only the man at the center of the room. He was a father hearing the voice of a past he had never been allowed to grieve. He looked toward the long table, the untouched champagne, the guests pretending not to watch. Then he looked back at Maya. You came here alone? He asked. Not alone, Maya said. My aunt drove me. Adrian's eyes softened. Where is she now? Maya pointed toward the hallway. She is waiting outside. She said I should decide for myself whether I wanted to come in. For the first time, Adrian almost smiled. Not because anything was resolved. Not because the pain was gone. But because he finally saw what kind of courage it took for a child to walk into a room full of strangers and speak a truth no one else had dared to carry. He turned toward the entrance and gave a short, firm nod. Bring her in, he said. Both of you. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter than the celebration behind them, but it carried its own kind of weight. Warm light spilled across the marble floor, and Maya stood beside her aunt with both hands wrapped around the strap of her small bag, as if she were holding steady a whole world that had nearly shaken apart. Adrian stepped into the doorway and stopped for a moment, taking in the woman beside her. She was composed, guarded, and clearly used to standing between danger and a child. Thank you for bringing her, he said. Maya's aunt gave him a careful look. I was not sure she should come at all, she replied. But she said she had to be the one to tell you. Adrian nodded slowly. He did not argue. He did not defend the room behind him. He only looked down at Maya and waited. Maya lifted her chin, and even in the soft light from the chandelier above, there was nothing small about the way she stood. I did not come here for the wedding, she said. I came because my mother told me something before she got sick, and I kept it with me. Adrian's expression changed at once. Every trace of the room, the guests, the music, all of it seemed to fall away as he listened. Maya reached into her bag and drew out a folded envelope that had grown soft at the edges from being handled too many times. She held it out with both hands. Adrian took it carefully, as if the paper itself might break the silence around them. She said if I ever found a man named Adrian Blackwood, I should give him that letter and make sure he read it all the way through. The words landed in the air like a bell. Adrian looked at the envelope, then at Maya, then back again. Your mother knew me? He asked quietly. Maya nodded. She knew you better than you knew yourself, she said, and the honesty in her voice made the answer impossible to ignore. Adrian opened the envelope with deliberate care. The note inside was short, but the effect of it was immediate. His shoulders stiffened. His gaze dropped to the page and stayed there far too long. Maya and her aunt watched him in silence while the music from the ballroom softened into a distant blur. When Adrian finally lifted his eyes, they were different. Not shocked, not angry, just deeply, unmistakably shaken. She wrote this before she died, he asked. Maya's aunt answered before Maya could. She wrote it while she was still fighting to stay well enough to finish it, she said. She wanted her daughter to have a chance to be heard. Adrian swallowed hard. For a moment, he seemed to forget the room behind him, the guests waiting for him to return, the life that had been arranged around him like a polished frame. All he could see was the child in front of him and the message she had carried through the door. He folded the letter once and held it to his chest. Then he looked at Maya with a steadiness that had not been there before. You did not come here by accident, he said. And you are not leaving without answers. Maya did not smile, but something in her eyes eased. Outside the ballroom, the night remained quiet, but inside the house, the truth had already begun to move. The ballroom had gone nearly silent, but inside the side hall, time felt oddly suspended. Adrian stood near the marble table with Maya and her aunt, his jacket still slightly open, his attention fixed on the folded letter in his hand. The pages were simple, the ink a little faded, yet every line seemed to pull another layer of truth into the room. Maya watched him carefully, her small fingers resting around the strap of her worn bag, the one she had held as if it was the only steady thing left in her world. Adrian lowered himself until his eyes were level with hers. Who helped you get here tonight? He asked, his voice calm but tight with feeling. Maya glanced at her aunt first, then answered in a quiet voice. My aunt did. She said if the letter ever reached your house, you would know it was real. The aunt nodded once, her expression tired but determined. Her mother kept this hidden for years, she said. She was afraid nobody would believe her daughter if she came alone. Adrian did not speak right away. He looked down at the letter again, then toward the doorway where the noise of the reception drifted in like a faraway tide. The polished world outside seemed distant now, almost unreal. What else did she say? He asked. Maya took a breath and stood a little straighter. She said you had a music room on the second floor, she said, and that there was a small wooden box near the window with my name inside it. Adrian's face changed at once. The slightest movement in his jaw told the story before his voice did. He turned toward the hall, then back to Maya, as if trying to measure the weight of what he had just heard. Come with me, he said softly. Both of you. They followed him through the corridor, past framed photographs and warm lights that cast long reflections over the floor. The house felt different now, less like a place built for celebration and more like a place waiting to be remembered. At the end of the hallway, Adrian opened a narrow door and stepped into a quiet room lined with shelves, music stands, and a grand piano beneath a tall window. Moonlight touched the keys in a pale stripe. On the windowsill sat a small wooden box, worn at the corners and covered in a thin layer of dust. Maya froze when she saw it. Adrian reached for it slowly, almost reverently, and set it on the table between them. This was here when I moved in, he said. I never opened it. Maya's aunt pressed a hand to her mouth. The room seemed to hold its breath. Adrian lifted the lid. Inside were a few carefully preserved items, a faded ribbon, a photograph with softened edges, and a folded note tied with a thin white string. Maya stared at the photograph first, then at Adrian, as if her thoughts were moving too quickly to catch. He unfolded the note with careful fingers and read the first line aloud in a low voice. If you are reading this, then the box found its way back to the right person. Maya's eyes widened just a little. Adrian looked up at her, his expression no longer distant, no longer guarded. There was something unmistakably changed in it now, something honest and open. Your mother wanted this found, he said, and I think she wanted me to understand something I should have understood long ago. In the soft light of the music room, Maya did not look small anymore. She looked certain, as if the truth had finally given her a place to stand. And for the first time that night, Adrian did not look like a man in control of everything around him. He looked like someone finally ready to listen. For a long moment, the music room stayed still except for the faint hum of the house and the soft tick of a clock somewhere down the hall. Adrian lowered the note and let his gaze rest on Maya, not with confusion now, but with a quiet kind of respect. The girl did not move. She only held the photograph against her chest and waited, steady and composed, like someone who had already learned that truth often arrived quietly. Your mother kept this safe for a reason, Adrian said at last. His voice was low, almost careful, as if he did not want to break the fragile calm between them. He set the note on the piano and looked again at the old wooden box. Inside, beneath the folded paper and the photograph, there was one more item wrapped in a faded handkerchief. Maya reached for it first. When she opened the cloth, a slim gold bracelet caught the light from the lamp near the window. Adrian went very still. The bracelet had a small engraving inside the band, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. Maya turned it slowly in her hand, then looked up. My mom used to say this was important, she said. She said I should never let anybody tell me where I belong. Adrian swallowed hard. His eyes stayed on the bracelet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, there was a different kind of weight in his voice. That was the bracelet your mother wore the night I last saw her. Maya did not answer right away. She only blinked, the truth settling around her one piece at a time. Adrian stepped closer, not to take anything from her, only to see the engraving for himself. There it was, worn but clear enough to read, for A and M. A small sound escaped him, not quite a breath, not quite a laugh, but something fuller than either. He pressed one hand to the edge of the piano and closed his eyes for just a second. When he opened them, he looked older, softer, and deeply shaken in a way no one in the house had ever seen. She wanted this to come back to you, Maya said softly. She wanted someone to remember. Adrian nodded once, slowly. The room felt different now, as if the air itself had changed. Outside, the last of the evening lights stretched across the glass doors, turning the room gold at the edges. He looked at the child in front of him, at the careful way she stood, at the courage she had carried into the house without fear of his title or his silence. Then I will remember, he said. Maya's shoulders eased a little, just enough to notice. For the first time, Adrian knelt beside her, bringing himself down to her level without hesitation. And I think, he added, his voice gentler now, I have spent too many years forgetting the wrong things. Maya looked at him for a long moment, then at the bracelet again. The answer was not complete yet, but something undeniable had already begun to form between them. Not a promise made for the room, not a performance for anyone watching, just the beginning of a truth that had finally found its way home. The silence in the room did not feel empty anymore. It felt awake. Adrian remained beside Maya, one hand resting loosely on his knee, as if he was still learning how to be near her without breaking the fragile thread that had just appeared between them. Across the room, the old bracelet sat in the warm light on the table, its metal catching soft gold from the lamps. Maya reached for it again, not with urgency now, but with care, turning it slowly between her fingers. My mom used to say this one was special, she said in a small voice. Adrian looked at the bracelet, then at her face, and something in his expression shifted, quiet and deep. She was right, he said. It is. Maya studied him carefully, the way children do when they are deciding whether a grown-up is speaking from the heart. Then she asked, Did you know her well? The question landed gently, but it carried weight. Adrian drew in a slow breath. I knew her, he said, and I should have known more. I should have asked better questions. I should have paid attention when it mattered. His answer was honest enough to make the air feel softer. Maya nodded once, not because everything had been solved, but because truth had finally entered the room without pretending to be perfect. In the hallway, a quiet step sounded, then stopped. A housekeeper had paused near the doorway, careful not to interrupt, her eyes lowering respectfully before she moved away again. The moment reminded Adrian that the house had been watching long before he had started to see. Maya noticed the glance too, and she straightened her small shoulders. If people are going to talk, she said, they should at least talk about the truth. Adrian let out a breath that was almost a laugh, almost relief. That sounds like something your mother would say. Maya did not answer right away. She only held the bracelet closer and looked toward the window, where the evening had turned into a deep blue sky. Somewhere beyond the glass, a fountain whispered in the garden. Inside, the lamps gave the room a quiet, steady glow. Adrian rose slowly and crossed to the mantel, where a framed photograph stood partly turned away. He had not touched it in years. Now he picked it up and faced it toward Maya. In the image, a younger woman stood smiling with the same bracelet on her wrist, her expression open and full of life. Maya's eyes widened. That is her, she whispered. Adrian nodded. Yes, that is your mother. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The truth did not rush. It settled. Maya looked from the picture to him, then back again, as if her heart were learning a new language. Then she really knew this place, she said. She did, Adrian answered. And if she had been here today, I think she would have known exactly what to do. Maya's mouth curved into the smallest smile, careful and bright. Adrian looked at that smile as if it had found a crack in a wall he had lived behind for years. Then, very quietly, he said, "I am not going to let this stay unfinished." The words were not dramatic. They were steadier than that. They sounded like a decision made with both regret and hope. Maya slipped the bracelet onto her wrist and held up her hand to see how it caught the light. "Then do not," she said. And in that simple answer, Adrian found something he had not expected to receive so soon: permission to begin again. The next morning came in soft gray light, the kind that made the windows glow before the city had fully awakened. Adrian was already downstairs when Maya appeared at the top of the staircase, her bracelet catching one quiet spark of sun as she came down. The house felt different now. Not fixed, not finished, but less empty. On the long dining table, there were folders, a legal pad, and a mug of coffee gone half cold. Adrian stood beside them in a dark sweater instead of a suit, and for once he looked less like a man who had spent years controlling every room he entered and more like someone finally willing to listen to one. "Good morning," he said. Maya nodded and climbed into the chair across from him without hesitation. In the silence that followed, a housekeeper set down a plate of eggs and toast, then stepped away again as if she understood that this moment belonged to them alone. Adrian opened the first folder and slid it toward her. Inside were copies of old records, property notes, and photographs of the house from years ago. "I spent last night going through everything I should have looked at a long time ago," he said. Maya leaned forward, her small fingers resting on the edge of the table. She did not touch the papers yet. She studied them. The way she studied things was never childish in the careless sense. It was careful, almost patient, as if she knew some truths only reveal themselves when they are treated gently. Adrian noticed that, and something in him tightened with respect. "There are names here," he said, tapping one page lightly. "People who worked in this house, people who helped your mother, people I should have thanked before now." Maya looked up. "Did you know her for a long time?" The question was simple, but it landed with the weight of a door opening somewhere deep inside him. Adrian took a slow breath. "Long enough to remember the sound of her laugh," he said. "Not long enough to deserve forgetting it." Maya lowered her eyes to the bracelet, turning it once around her wrist. "She used to say some things wait until the right time," she said. Adrian looked at her for a moment, then gave the smallest nod. "Your mother was right." He reached for another folder and withdrew a letter sealed in a pale envelope. "This arrived years ago. It should have been opened then. It was not." He placed it near her plate, but did not push it any closer. "If you want, you can open it now. If not, it can wait." Maya looked at the envelope as if it were not paper at all, but a bridge. Then she took it with both hands. Outside, a car passed slowly along the street. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. The house kept breathing around them. Maya broke the seal carefully and unfolded the letter. Adrian did not interrupt. He only watched her face change by degrees, from concentration to stillness, then to a quiet kind of recognition he had seen in the mirror many times and never expected to see in a child. At the bottom of the page was her mother's handwriting, slanted and graceful, full of warmth even in the small spaces between the lines. Maya read the last sentence twice. Then she looked up. "She wanted me to be brave," she said softly. Adrian answered just as softly, "And she clearly knew you would be." For a moment neither of them spoke again. The morning light moved across the table and settled on the bracelet, on the envelope, on the old photographs waiting beside the coffee mug. Then Maya slid the letter back into the envelope and sat straighter in her chair. "What happens now?" she asked. It was not a frightened question. It was a practical one. A decision question. The kind that changed the shape of a future. Adrian folded his hands together and looked at her with a steadiness that would have been impossible for him a week ago. "Now," he said, "we do this the right way. Together. We make sure every promise that was broken gets answered. We tell the truth to the people who need to hear it. And we build something better than what was left behind." Maya nodded once, slowly. Then she reached for a bite of toast, as if the world had finally become safe enough to be ordinary again. Adrian watched her, and for the first time in years, the silence between them did not feel like distance. It felt like room. Room for honesty. Room for healing. Room for the kind of second chance that did not erase the past, but refused to let it win. And as the morning deepened around them, Adrian understood something that no contract, no building, and no fortune had ever taught him. The future was never repaired by power alone. It was rebuilt by truth, by patience, and by the quiet courage of a little girl who had never stopped asking the right questions.